We did the handstand, now let's get into the planche. One of the most amazing gravity-defying skills that is actually way simpler to get to than you think. If you're able to achieve this skill, you are going to look like you are defying gravity with just your body. Let's actually figure out progressions for the planche, the biggest mistakes and how to fix them, how long does it actually take for you to get this skill. Now, I've been coaching Awesome Ninja Fitness here and getting everyday people to get into the planche. Based on my background from coaching men's gymnastics, the planche is one of those fundamental skills. They even doing it on rings, which is an unstable surface, which makes it even harder. Now, what does a good planche looks like? Looks like a plank in which your legs are off the ground. The other way is a legless push-up. The main thing is you see that the shoulders are way more in front of the hands. This is because you need your center of gravity in the middle. Now, depending on how strong your legs are compared to your upper body, that means your belly button is going to be very close to where the placements of your hands. Speaking of hands, they do not have to be fingers pointed straight. Honestly, that is way harder on the wrist, and it's not necessary. Mostly in men's gymnastics, their fingers are pointing out onto the side, so much your fingers are pointing away from you. Honestly, find the way that it's most comfortable. Usually it's going to be on the side. Another part is you're completely pushed, in which your scapula is pushing out, what sometimes we call as the angry cat position. You see that the big hump in the back where the shoulders are. This is because you're doing something called stacking or locking in. What that means is you're putting your body in a specific position in which is the most advantageous for the muscles, the joints, and everything to work together. For example, in a handstand, if you are from feet to hands in a straight line, that means your body is stacked one on top of each other. That means you are using that position to make it as easy as possible for your body. Well, anything is exaggerated, you gotta overcompensate, just like standing up with a bad posture. In Ninja Warrior, you might see this when you're hanging on an obstacle. Sometimes, instead of just holding it on like this, you are locking, you're pushing your shoulder back as much as you can, in which to activate the muscle, using your muscles to lock in your joint to make it a lot easier. The planche does something very similar with those two concepts, making sure that the right muscles are being activated and locking in the joint so that that doesn't move. Now, how can we get to the planche? Well, the first step would honestly just be the push-up. We already did a video on progressing through the push-ups. Once you get to the full push-up, if you're doing it properly, the other muscles that are supposed to be activated are being used, which are the legs, the core, the back, to tighten you up to make sure that you stay in a solid plank position. Once you get the full push-up, now you're getting into pseudo planche push-ups. As you can see, one of the main things you need to be able to do is to lean your shoulders forward. This is one of the reasons why the planche is such a difficult move. You are using muscles in your body that are not typically the biggest muscles in your body. In the planche, it has a lot to do with your scapula, which is your back, and also a lot in your shoulders. By leaning forward, you are making sure that you're putting way more pressure on where it needs to be. A lot of times you'll feel it in the elbow joint. That is one of the things that if you are coming in without a background of fitness, it's going to take a little bit more time because joints aren't exactly muscles. They act similarly, but they take a long time to build. You can see rock climbers who are really strong in their fingers can hold very, very small holds. That is the tendons in their fingers, but they need to work on that for an extremely long time and that gets built up. And for us, now the elbow joint might be something you might be feeling it at first. As you're doing the push-up progressions to get the pseudo planche push-ups, you're also doing something called a scapula push-up. Basically, the only difference you're doing with a push-up, you are just pushing up a little bit more to get that arched back. Now for more progressions, we're gonna get into the next one that I love so much, and you hear me repeat it a bunch of times, the crow pose. The planche is a holding position. For the crow pose, it's more about learning how to push and hold our body when our legs are off the ground. A handstand is balancing vertically. Planche is you're gonna be balancing horizontally, but focusing a lot more on strength. Now, this is more just to get the balance. If it's really hard on the wrist, then the next steps are gonna be extremely difficult. Your next part is something called a crane pose or the tucked planche. The reason why I put both of these together is because honestly, you find the one that's easiest because they both really get the same thing. The crane pose means it's the crow pose, but your arms are completely locked out and straight. Now we're feeling what it's like to get full pressure on those arms with those arms straight. The tuck planche, it is a planche in which your arms are straight on the ground, but you're doing a ball, crunching your legs up, bringing your knees to your chest as close as possible. This is now we're starting to use the pushing strength and using our legs and our back at the same time. The reason why I said the planche is pretty straightforward because from here, you're holding the planche until you're getting to the full planche. The tuck planche then moves into the advanced tuck planche, which means you are slowly opening up your legs as far as possible, bringing your legs further back as much as you can and slowly straighten them out. At one point, you're going to be doing an L shape with your legs in which your thighs are horizontal with the ground and your feet are straight up. Then you're going into a straddle planche in which your legs are straight out and separated. Then you are doing half tuck, which means one leg is straight, one is bent, and then the full planche. The good news with the planche is that these very micro changes make such a huge difference. Just having your legs slightly further out, you will feel it. So that's why even from the tuck planche to the advanced tuck planche, it can be one leg at a time and slightly further as well. So you might be 80% to the advanced tuck planche or 30%, whatever it is. You have such these small changes. How do you know when to move on onto the next progression? Well, ideally, if you're able to hold that progression for at least 10 seconds, you're able to work on the next progression. The other good news with working on these skills is if you're holding a skill, let's say for 5 seconds, and you're not able to hold it anymore, you can go down to an easier progression to still get that time under tension, meaning you're putting your body through the ringer a little bit longer in order to get better at that skill. Now, a little bit more tactical with the reps, there are 2 philosophies depending on your level on the move. The easier version is in which you're holding for 20 to 30 seconds, meaning it doesn't matter how many attempts it takes you to do it. You do 5 seconds each rep until you get to 30 seconds, then that's when you're resting until the next set. The next school of thought is you're trying to get 6 reps of 10 seconds no matter what. So ideally, you're holding it for 10 seconds at the hardest progression until you bring it down, and then you go back down for about 10 seconds, and then you go back up. This is way harder, way more intense, but easier to track, and you should get more reps out of it. We have already gone over most of the biggest mistakes in the planche. Let's do a really quick recap on the mistakes and make sure that we've clarified all of them in one spot. So first is the wrist position. If your wrists are hurting, that means there might be a mobility issue or your wrists might be pointing at the wrong spot. You can have your fingers pointed out. You could also have them pointed towards you, so fingers towards the feet, whichever one feels the best. Your fingers do not need to be pointed forward. The second is not actually pushing through your scapula, meaning you're locking your body in and stacking it together in order to get the most out of your muscles and your joints. If you don't see that bump in your back and you don't have that angry cat position, then make sure you're pushing through it or do an easier progression in which your goal is to be pushing out as hard as you can. That's one of the reasons why progressing from the tucked planche order to the next progression is a lot harder. Last one is not actually activating the other muscles. Your glutes, your legs need to be tight and need to actually be worked. You're not going to be feeling this at an intensity until you start bringing your legs further out. So in the tucked planche position, try to lift your hips up as much as you can, and there's a really good drill for this. So let's actually get into the last part on which drills can actually help you get the planche faster. Now we talked about the progressions on holding the move. Let's talk about supplementary moves. Just like how we talked about in the handstand, where there are certain moves that helps you get the handstand better. Planche is very similar. We talked about the scapula push-ups, depending on whichever push-up progression you are in. We talked about the pseudo planche push-ups, in which you're putting more on your arms and joints. That's regarded to strength. The next is you need to be able to have a strong core and tight legs in order to hold it. So in order to work on those moves, one of the best ways is working on plank. What I also like is wall planks. So you're putting your feet slightly higher and putting it against the wall. This way you actually have to activate your body a little bit more and think about pushing in. You can't be 100% loose. The last way of doing this is when you're at push-ups, you do elevated push-ups in which your feet are a little bit higher. You're putting on something that's not much higher than your shoulder height when you're in the full top of the push-up. Then you're lifting one leg up at a time and you're trying to hold that so one side of your body is working it for half of the push-up and the other push-up is there. Combine that with the pseudo planche leans, which makes it a little bit more intense since your feet are higher. And now you have a lot of exercises and progressions to get you into the planche. The last one to work on specifically the legs and the position, especially if you don't want to get burnt out too much, is using bands. Just like how you would use elastic bands to help you with the pull-ups, you can do that with the planche. Again, we usually suggest this last because it is trying to limit the amount of equipment that you need, but it is a useful piece of equipment that helps. If planche is your main goal, first you'd work on the highest progression you can for the planche holds. After you've done that workout, then the next thing is to work on the supplementary exercises that also helps, but will be a little bit more tired. That would mean your push-up progression on whatever that is, just making sure that you are pushing up completely on the top or you're leaning forward. So you're doing pseudo planche push-ups and you're still pushing up on the top. Then the last thing you're doing is whatever core supplementary work. If you're doing this already with your feet on the table, you are getting both things on one exercise, so we don't need to add more. If not, just ending with some sort of plank or feet elevated plank, then you're getting a little bit extra and still technically holding it. Just make sure it is not too much effort on your elbow joint. Once you get injured, you're gonna have to stop your progress, wait a lot longer to recover. And how long does it actually take to get the planche. Again, there's no one size fits all, it's different for every person, but assuming someone has a basic fitness level of being able to do push-ups, it can take up to 2 years to get the planche. That is a top tier skill. Just means it takes a lot of time and effort, and we want to progress towards it eventually. So we want all our other things to get skills that are faster, easier, and cool that also work towards that. As you can see this entire video, how some of the exercises and the progressions we talked about for the handstand eventually help with other skills in the future. This is one of those. So those here live in the community, let's go into Q&A and actually talk about a little bit more in the planche, answer all your questions, maybe look at a couple of videos of you guys holding it or how we can adjust to get it a little bit further. Everyone here on the internet who's not watching your live, go ahead, join the community. It's free. There should be a link somewhere here, and then you can join us on the Q&As live in order to actually answer your specific questions right there, right then, and answer everything that we can. Either way, the planche is such an amazing skill and it takes such a long time to get. There's not a lot of people who get it, but you can work on that and work a bunch of other skills and eventually get into it. The main thing that you need to do to get the planche is just consistency. It is very simple. It is very straightforward. You do the easier version until you can do the harder version. It just takes time. That's it. And as long as you stay consistent, you are also going to stay awesome.